Anybody like to start? You can unmute yourselves, or I can unmute you. Depend on what you want to do. Yes, Marina. Yeah, I've unmuted you. Okay, go ahead.
I think I'm right in remembering that with Extinction Rebellion, one of the things I can remember being quoted that it only requires 5% of the population to really change and get behind an idea for that. You know, that's a tipping point in terms of change in awareness. So it in that way, I mean, it's not, you don't need 50% or 60%, you need 5%, which feels
doable. Yeah.
Yes. So,
yeah, I mean, I think it depends at what level. I think the 5% that is people who are very committed, and then probably around them there's another 20% who are somewhat committed. And then people in the middle who are neutral, and there's people who are against. And I think that number may be reducing. I don't know about that, but yeah, but yeah, that's right. It's not quite. It doesn't work quite the obvious way.
No. So I mean, just as a very short answer to your question, that is grounds for hope. You know, you don't need to do everything. You need to do something, and what you do needs to be sufficient. But it doesn't need to be everything, because the momentum will continue.
Yeah.
I actually think that we need to get more hopeful, because hope is a wonderful motivator. And if we are pessimistic about the possibilities, I think we feel more powerless to do anything about it. And I think hope, or call it hope, possibility, optimism, when that's there, we are more productive, at least I am. And I believe a lot of people respond with much more participation. And people I talk to that are less positive are more with, what's the point?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And Paul Hawken makes that point very strongly, doesn't he, in the video? I mean, there was some research done. I haven't, again, checked this out, but it sounded quite interesting. Somebody did research into people who are pessimistic and people who are optimistic. And what they found was that, you know, in terms of their expectations of the future, that the pessimistic people were more often right. But the optimistic people more often got the results in their life that they wanted. So it comes down to, if you think it's more important to be right, then you should be a pessimist. But if you think it's more important to be happy, you should be an optimist. and to do well. If they were successful, they were more successful because they weren't as successful as they thought they were going to be, but they were more successful than the pessimists who didn't, as you say, if you convinced that your efforts are not going to bring about the result, why would you bother?
Hard to be consistent at that point. Another aspect of thought is, when I was younger, I used to, I think, aim really, really lift the bar up as high as you can. Because if in life we're going to achieve, say, maybe 10 or 20% of what we think is possible or what we can do, then aim that bar right up there, because 20% of a really high bar is a lot more of 20% of a bar that's down below.
Yes, yeah, that's right. Or even if it's 50%, but if it's 1/10 as much, you know, well, you go for the 20% of the 10 times as much,
No, but if you aim, 20% of a big aim is much better than 20% of a, I'll settle for that.
Yes.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
I was listening to a different Joanna Macy this morning.
Oh, yeah.
That was about living in the moment.
Oh, right.
And then
very important.
You liberate yourself from whether you're hopeful or hopeless.
Very good.
And then she went on and said, if you think about David and Goliath, nobody tapped David on the shoulder when he was just setting off and said, are you feeling hopeful or hopeless about it? Because he'd have said, oh, get out of my way, I've got a job to do.
Exactly.
Frodo in Lord of the Rings or something like that.
Yeah. Frodo, yes. Paul Hawken mentioned Frodo, didn't he?
Something like that, a different way to think about it was to live in the moment and trust your intuition about what you feel you need to do, and get on and do it, and then you'll see whether it happens or not. Not worry about whether you're feeling hopeful or hopeless about it. But and that was a different slant from.
That's right. Yes. So our left brain likes to have, definite answers, doesn't it? We want to create a conceptual model of this future that we think we're going into. Well, whatever our conceptual model is, it ain't going to be like that. And actually, our conceptual model of the present moment isn't how things are. Our left brain doesn't see things the way they are. We still need it, if we're going to act in a way that is sort of oriented to the reality of the situation. We need information that as our left brain is able to process. But yeah, totally right. We need to recognize that present moment is the only moment that there is. And when we think about the future, what we're really thinking about is something that is a projection of the present moment. It's not some independently real future that's out there. Because if it was, we couldn't do anything about it. But it's not. The future is being created now, and so how we, if we can be fully in that moment and fully sort of acting on behalf of life in this moment, then there's probably nothing to worry about, actually. But I think there isn't anything to worry about. Worry doesn't make any sense if you are in the moment. Eckhart Tolle is brilliant on this, because he really lives in the moment all the time, and he teaches from there, and I find that very inspiring. I have to say, when I before the COVID thing broke out, and I had that period of illness, and I had it was a time of extraordinary calm in my mind, and one of the things that I was calm about was the climate threat, and I was really. Like, I had never come to this place before, this place of absolute acceptance, because at the time I wasn't really, we're not feeling optimistic. My assessment of the situation was, well, probably it is too late, and this is going to happen, and this is the biggest, catastrophe that we could imagine. But because, I had come to seeing it from a place of not blaming anybody or not kind of holding myself, sort of responsible in an unreal way that I've got to fix this problem. Or, it was like, well, this is part of the unfolding evolution of life. And no, it's probably not going to mean the end of humanity, but it is going to mean a lot of a huge amount of death of human and non-human life, and very destructive. But I came to this place of extreme calm, and it was partly, I don't know what was the cause and what was the effect, but it was partly because I've been listening to a lot of Eckhart Tolle's teachings, and really I found such truth in that. If you live in the moment, you cannot be anxious. Anyway, yes, Dee.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember who it was that said it now, but it's a well-used phrase that people say that if you can do something about a problem, then just do it. But you don't need to waste time worrying, because if you can't do anything to change it, then there's no good worrying about it. And another one that I quote so many times, it gets boring for everybody else, I'm sure, but it's a bit like one of my mantras, is to be the change that you want to see in the world. If you want to see something changed, then do it and be part of that. And I think this is what it's giving people an option for now. They've had a wake-up call, and I think there's possibly more people now who are ready to be part of that change that they do want to see in the world. And hopefully, no matter how small of a change they want to make, and their contributions may only be small, but those small bits go a long way, really. That's what I feel, and that's the sort of positive side that I'm getting out of it, out of all of this and the whole thing. And strangely enough, when you were talking earlier on about sort of having some people that will survive and some won't, the thought came to my mind about good bacteria and bad bacteria. And it is exactly the same as that there's going to be some people who won't survive as such, but that not because there any reason that they're bad or anything, but it's just not their time now. But there will be other people that will actually maybe come to the fore that previously some people used to think were a bit nutty, you know, but they've actually got more views now that people will be going, well, do you remember what so and so and so and so was saying, you know, including people like Prince Charles, who has been talking to plants for years and has been very much about what's been going on in the climate and everything else like that, and loads of people have poo-pooed him. But I've often thought that, you know, what he's been saying is there's a lot of things he says that are very truthful and very sensible.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I do wonder, you know, whether some of that ridicule that's poured on Prince Charles is actually cynically, politically motivated because he has those views, and there are people who want to suppress those views. I don't think it's all just, you know, I can understand how, you know, he could be a figure of fun for some people. I certainly don't see him that way, but yeah, I can kind of understand that. But you know, it's part of, I think it's part of a very you know, systematic propaganda campaign to suppress positive ideas. I mean, Jeremy Corbyn's a better example, really. I think, you know, that he's acquired the image in the media of a stupid person, a terrible person, when in fact he's nothing of the kind. I mean, you know, it's very clear to me that he is, you know, one of the most politicians of the greatest integrity and wisdom that we've got in this country. But of course, the things that he's saying don't suit some of the people who want to manipulate the political process. So he has to be.
Especially business people who want to still be making their money, you see. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is another deep question. I just want to actually come back to something that was perhaps something that I didn't complete saying in the talk. And I've probably said it before to some extent, but I wanted to underline it again, that, you know, this change in consciousness is now becoming more and more crystal clear to me that this is the essence of the problem, especially, you know, that actually, I have to say, even though I knew a lot of this information, you know, just hearing Paul Hawkins talk really reinforced that view to me, that no, it isn't about, you know, that people thinking about climate change a lot tend to focus on the you know, the scientific information, the physical problem, and can we get the scale of, you know, or is it too late? I think for me, you know, the work that he's done has actually knocked that argument out of the tennis court. That's not the problem. The problem isn't that we cannot come up with the technical solutions. And I mean, Adrian was talking to me about, you know, wanting to put more emphasis on some of the biological solutions as well. And when I say technical, I include those, you know, changes in the way that we grow food and use the land and so forth. But overall, that's not where the problem's located. The problem is located up here, you know, in the way that we are thinking about the problem collectively as a human species. And when I say thinking, I don't just mean, you know, abstract intellectual thought, but I mean, you know, the thinking that guides our practical actions, our decisions, political and economic decisions, are still under the control of a structure within society that is organized around a worldview that is the wrong worldview for this time. That mechanistic worldview of excessive left brain thinking, you know, is it's now become life-threatening. Its extreme dominance and the but I think that the other side, the intuitive, holistic awareness and the spiritual awareness, there's no more doubt in my mind that it is increasing massively. It's accelerating. It's coming to a tipping point. And this is where we, specifically, this kind of group, has a very significant role to play. Even though we're a tiny group, you know, each of us is connected to other people and other groups, and this is going to spread. And I think, you know, Andy Wistrike was saying to me as well this morning, you know, what we're doing here is incredibly significant and important, because it is this kind of work that is the fuel, if you like, for the increase, the growth of that different consciousness. And people have been saying more and more loudly for many, many years, and I've been involved in sort of these kind of, you know, actions for decades now, and people have been talking about a changing consciousness and more. Where is it? It's not happening, it's not happening, it's not happening, it's not happening. It's not happening at the level of national governments and international bodies very much, but it is happening at the level of, you know, the human organism, if you like, the human superorganism. Something is happening here. So Paul Hawken wrote about it in terms of this global social and environmental movement. He writes beautifully about it. But here, you know, I think there's a special element in that. Most of those organizations he's talking about are focused on one or another sort of concrete problem out there in the world. And our focus is more of the transformation of consciousness itself. Now, that's not to say that people who are more into sort of, you know, growing food better and permaculture and things like that, that they're not, you know, in this great awakening of consciousness. And in fact, the permaculture movement actually talks quite a lot about consciousness. But, you know, many people are doing very much more tangible, concrete things, and they're absolutely vital and necessary and so on. But this Eco-Dharma, I think it has a special place. I think, you know, that the really fundamental thing is the shift in consciousness. And by shining a light on that, and simply by meeting together like this, we are part of this. I think it's a really magical and very, very important process that's happening. This is, you know, the mind of the earth waking up in a way. And I'm going to talk about the mind of the earth another time. It's a very, very interesting question. And, you know, there's this view that humans are the brain cells, you know, and the human society is the brain of the earth. And there's great truth in that, you know. But of course, the intelligence and awareness of Gaia, which I certainly do, and this is a very controversial statement, even in Gaia theory itself, never mind in conventional science, you know, is Gaia conscious? Well, I would say yes. And I don't think it's just conscious through human consciousness by any means. That's a very limited aspect. Actually, you know, the conventional science says that the consciousness of an individual human is entirely the product of the brain. And I think that's not true either. You know, the whole human organism is intelligent. Every part of your body is incredibly intelligent. And so our consciousness, our awareness is not just the firing of neurons in our brain. It's, you know, the whole body. And it's the same with the earth. We may have, you know, a special function to do with communication and information processing and all the rest of it, you know, as the brain has within the human body. But it's the earth as a whole that is conscious and has a kind of intelligence, a level of intelligence, I believe, totally beyond anything we can conceive as individual humans. But we are, you know, I mean, there may be other species that know this, but certainly we are unusual, maybe unique in being a species that is able to understand that this is the case. That's very significant. And so we need to go from, you know, the mechanistic left brain consciousness that has been dominant to the intuitive, holistic compassionate, right brain. And that doesn't see each of us as separate from all the rest. That doesn't see us as separate from nature. We are nature. Nature is us, into being. I love that word. That's just such a fantastic word. And I think I'm going to do one of these talks about into being and Thich Nhat Hanh, because he's such a incredibly important and wise human being. One of the greatest Buddhist teachers that's ever lived, I think. And of course, the founder of the movement of engaged Buddhism, really, as it is now, because they've always been engaged Buddhism. They've always been engaged Buddhists. The Buddha was an engaged Buddhist, but the bringing together of formally of Buddhist practice and ecological and social and peace activism. I think nobody played a bigger part than Thich Nhat Hanh and bringing that into being. And yeah, I'm quite sad, really. I mean, I attended one 3-day retreat with Thich Nhat Hanh, but if I look back over my life, I had so many opportunities to spend time in his presence, and really looking back, I wish I had. But perhaps it would have made it difficult for me to sort of stick with Tibetan Buddhism in the way that I have. I don't know. I don't know. I'm trying to think about the reason, but I just think he's such an important figure. Anyway, that's a bit of a side issue for tonight, this afternoon. But yes, is there somebody? Oh, are you just writing then, Etienne? Okay, or did you want to say something? Hang on. Yes.
Yeah. I had thoughts as you were talking about it. I think one of the thoughts I had was what I think Dee talked about Prince Charles and how he's laughed at for talking to plants. But that brought to mind a scientist called Jagdish Chandra Bose, who did very early experiments on plants.
Yeah.
And their awareness of people.
Yeah, very interesting person. Yeah.
So it was Charles is just someone who is picked up on those feelings, which have been growing since from the yogis and practitioners of Buddhism. They came through it naturally, but Jagdish Chandra Bose came to it more experimentally.
Yes. It was a friend of Paramahansa Yogananda, and they have a interesting relationship.
In terms of a change, and I'm thinking something you said, David, that brought about this thought that how much have I changed? Just a year back, what I was thinking, what my mind flow was, what my intentions were. I just wanted to travel, and that was kind of the central focus, and that's changed just over a form of year.
Okay.
And this kind of changes are happening in all individuals.
Yes.
That are gradually, and what we are doing is this feedback loop that we have started. Not we as a one individual group, but something that has started a while back and has been growing. And yes, the green movement started in 1970s, but its time has come now. It's grown, and the change that human society needed from pre-Newtonian universe and their way of thinking. I'm relating again to how I change as an individual. The humanity has to change from pre-Newtonian to Newtonian, the Industrial Revolution. And then from there, we haven't moved on into the Heisenbergian or the quantum physics world, where we are accepting that it's all just a field of possibilities, and that as an observer, we influence what's the outcome is, depending on what we are testing it for. So, and when I heard deep adaptation, I was filled with kind of a feeling that the the collapse is inevitable. I felt, yeah, a part of humanity would survive, and I thought then that perhaps the part of humanity that would survive is probably the worst of humanity in terms of the powerful businessmen and politicians.
Oh, we don't know.
What kind of human they would seed in the forthcoming earth. But what Paul said struck a note, very deep resonance in terms of that the message that we have been giving was fear of climate disruption, fear of disaster.
Mhm.
And that fear petrifies the imagination. And I
Yeah.
feel, in terms of speculating, that the consciousness evolves the form, the emptiness or consciousness evolves the form through imagination. And
Right.
if we petrify imagination, we are petrifying our fear of the doom, and then we bring that about.
Very
And
good.
there is,
Mm.
it is obviously a fact that most of humanity is going to be destroyed. The few would survive, but what is important is to allow the imagination to minimize the destruction, minimize the suffering. And that is probably what we are trying to do through meditation, through understanding, through linking, and through forming groups. We are strengthening this imagination of mankind. And if Earth lives, it lives through us as its individual cells. And perhaps some of us have grown cancerous, but perhaps that part will be cut out. And the survivors will be those capable of not only surviving, because I've heard talk about powerful people having these bolt holes dug out in the mountains and providing for their survival, but they have not got what it takes to really survive. They might survive physically for a while, but it's only the thinkers, the visionaries, the accomplished people who will not only survive but will thrive in the new change. And it may be 20, 30, 40, 50 years in future, maybe 100 years in future, but that is inevitable, that the earth will evolve the surviving species into a more conducive, more harmonious structures to promote life on a better level.
Well, it's very interesting you're talking about, this or that is inevitable in the future. And I think what I've been trying to say is, these are stories that our conceptual mind constructs, and they can be very convincing. And what I found is that depending on, I can shift my perspective, like when I was, when I listened to, one side of it, this very dark picture, yes, it's inevitable, we cannot possibly stop this. And then I listened to another side, listened to Paul Hawken. Wow, I didn't realize, gosh, maybe we can get through it, So we can construct these stories. We don't know what's inevitable, but Joanna Macy's point is, you choose the story that you want to get behind, and you act based on that. And you find out, we'll find out. But the thing is, whatever is the outcome, if we act in that way, if we act, with wholeheartedly giving our energy to the positive vision that we want to see, then whether or not that is the physical outcome, actually, if you think from a Dharma point of view, karmically, unquestionably, we are creating that positive future. Whatever may happen here on this earth, and then this Dharma picture is so much bigger, because we talk about all sentient beings. we are a pinprick on the Earth is a pinprick in the galaxy is a pinprick in the universe, you know. So we think that, you know, the immediate future of this human society, we think that's the world. Well, that's hardly anything really in the cosmic picture. But as Mahayana Buddhist practitioners, we're thinking about that bigger picture. So, you know, if we, that doesn't mean that we, and there is this temptation to sort of go off into this huge sort of cosmic universe and all sentient beings and forget about what's actually happening here. We need to be in the here and now, in the present moment, putting our energies to the positive possibilities here and now. But then, you know, ultimately, even if things do go pear-shaped for this Earth, our mind streams will continue to other places. I really think, you know, we should focus on this Earth. Actually, I think, you know, it's very, very important. If we're kidding ourselves, if we think we're thinking about something bigger, it does exist, but our imagination now and our understanding and our knowledge has reached the point where we can relate imaginatively to the Earth as a whole. And to some degree, we have some understanding of that, you know, wondrous, incredible thing, which is life on the Earth, Gaia. You know, we can relate to that, and we must understand that we must connect with having a love for that reality of life itself on the Earth, that is, and the Earth that is our mother, you know, a love that is deeper than any other love because it encompasses everything. So I think I'll give you the last word, Claire, and then we'll just finish with a bit of meditation.
I wanted to show you this picture.
Okay.
It's the last one I drew. It's of Thich Nhat Hanh, who you were talking about.
Probably, I thought that was him, yeah.
You know, just even doing his face and drawing his features felt beautifully and deeply connective, actually. That was one of the reasons why I decided to do it, so I could connect with them on that level. And the
aliveness, the awareness in his face and his features and his voice is extraordinary, isn't it? Hello, has somebody gone or somebody appeared? What happened? Have we got one extra or one fewer? No, they've just rearranged themselves.
They've just rearranged and moved around all of a sudden.
Oh, I haven't seen that before. Right, okay, so Claire, I'm just going to put this on full screen and just show us that picture again, Claire.
Can you see it?
Yeah, lovely. So just for the recording. That's beautiful. That's Thich.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Okay. Right. So